If you're a facilities manager at a university, you know students rely on the cafeteria for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and the occasional late-night snack. So when a dishwasher breaks down and dirty plates pile up, the mess hall can turn messy in the blink of an eye. Enter Grainger. With over 1 million industrial-grade products and fast delivery, the product you need now is never far away. So you can turn that dishwasher back into a lean, clean washing machine. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Welcome to IGH Going Rogue. Today is Monday, November 18th. What a weekend. What a day to be alive in America and the world. We just saw this weekend, just spectacular. The country coming together from the UFC 309 fight, which was amazing. John Bones Jones crushing Stipe. And then doing the Trump dance. That was fantastic. When we saw the entrance of the president with the rest of the Avengers into the stadium in the Madison Square Garden, wow, that was just hair-raising. It was an emotional moment, I think, for everybody in the country to really see that this farce that the left had created about this boogeyman and this evil person, this fascist and devil, was all a lie. Everybody loves this guy. 76 million people voted for him. That's, in my book, the most any president has ever obtained, because I don't believe the 81 million votes that Joe Biden got hiding in his basement. And then yesterday, the entire NFL doing the Trump dance. It was fantastic. Anyways, today we have a special guest, a good friend, former CIA operative, Pedro Israel Horta. He's also a ordained minister. He's got a book, the brokenwhistlebook.com, and the movie, which I always forget the movie. It is deepstategangsters.com. So you can't miss either of those. And Pedro, welcome, man. I'm glad we got over a little bit of technical difficulties here, but thanks for your patience. We were moving our studio over the weekend, and we're setting up a more podcast style, studio. So while we did that, one of the levers, one of the buttons, something got moved, and we couldn't hear you when you were coming in. But it's a little different set. We got some toys here on the table, some of our favorite ones. This one I love. This is my favorite. This is my go-to every single day. It is my assault shotgun, my Kel-Tec KSR. It holds 11 rounds or 11 shells. Absolutely love it. Oh, look at that. Oh, man, look at that AR. That is beautiful. Absolutely love it. I'm going to go get my collection in a minute. That is beautiful. Absolutely love that. Oh, my God.
Shotgun. It's a shotgun. You can use a 10-round magazine or a 6-round magazine.
Oh, that's a shotgun.
Shotgun, but operates as an AR.
Wow.
It's the AR system built into a shotgun.
That is amazing, man. You got to tell me where you got that. Where'd you get that?
I got this at Shields. Shields is a new sporting goods stores here in Tulsa.
And what is the brand?
The manufacturer is Rogue.
The manufacturer is Rogue?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I'm going to have to talk to them.
Yeah.
Look at that, man.
Citadel. There.
That is beautiful. I love that, man. I'm going to have to get one of those. But this one is beautiful. It's, real precise. It's, if you got to go in, go hunt somebody down in your house, right? It's perfect, man. And obviously this little one, this is a 9mm pistol. It's the Saint, right? Springfield Armory.
Yes.
So, always love those. And, my everyday carry is my Glock 20, my G20 Gen 5. So it's a 10 mil. I love the stopping power on that. I didn't know this, but the 10 mil is the only round that will put down a grizzly or a lion. It's the only big game round. So not even a 357 will do it. Isn't that crazy?
Amazing.
So, and then this one's fun too. I mean, it's got the laser on it. It's my 19X, and then my SIG. It is a beauty. The P226 Legion, that Legion line is real nice. But yeah, man. So we're having fun. We're going rogue. Hopefully not get arrested for, brandishing arms on the air, right? In public. But anyways, hey, so what did you think about this weekend? I started it off as, the left had created this boogeyman, this ogre, this evil demon, this, fascist and racist and xenophobe and all this stuff, right? I'm not going to cuss. I usually do. I know you're an ordained minister, so I'm going to try and refrain myself in my profanity. But the country didn't believe it. And the country, after the election, it seemed like the weight of the world was lifted off of everybody's shoulders, and now everybody's starting to come together and have fun. You see John Jones, you see Bones right after he won. He started doing the Trump dance, and he went over and gave Trump his belt. In the NFL, you see all these guys doing the Trump dance. Even people in the stands started doing the Trump dance, and that's not an environment of a divided country and people that hate and despise each other, is it?
Well, I mean, what has happened here is we've had this media narrative, the elites, and we're talking about a very minute percentage. I mean, you could probably round it up to 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe even less of, individuals that have demonized President Trump and made him to be so evil. Well, now, like you said, 76 million voted for him. And the reality is that there are many Democrats out there who are basically closet Trump supporters, who have not said publicly that we support Trump because they're in fear that others would basically begin to malign them and potentially, cancel them. So more and more people are coming out as being pro-Trump, or at least not being so silent about it. While at the same time, for the most part, people on the left are still deranged and still suffer from the Trump derangement syndrome. I mean, we still have many of them calling him evil and this and that. But, the reality is that many of these media platforms, CNN, MSNBC, the mainstream media, they have taken a serious hit for their anti-Trump reporting. And they've come to the realization that, if they continue down this bandwagon, their bandwagon is going to go off the cliff and off the air. So they're having to temper down what they've been saying and begin to, not be so critical, but at the same time try to be somewhat objective rather than subjective.
Yeah, I don't know if you heard, but Morning Joke and Mika actually had a private breakfast with the president in Mar-a-Lago over the weekend.
Yeah, it's unprecedented, but I suspect we'll do more and more of that.
Yeah, the first time they have spoken or been in person in over 7 years. So times are changing. They've realized, they're going to get burned. MSNBC is on the chopping blocks. It's going to get sold. I think all these crazies and lunatics are on their way to canceling themselves and off into the abyss. Look, when you see some of these people, and you've played in the intelligence world at a very high level. You can tell us a little bit about your background, or a lot actually, because that's where we want to go. We've seen this play out in so many countries, right? The psyops and the stuff, and how they use the media. And I never thought that would happen here in America, that the media would be used against its own people, and it has been. And it started, I believe, back with Obama, where if you didn't vote for him, it's because you were a racist, and not because you disagreed on his policies. It was because you hated or didn't like black people. And I think that's, fundamentally wrong. And I think the country has outgrown that phase. It's taken us a while, unfortunately, and a lot of damage has been done. But, I think it's finally happening. I think we're turning the page. I think the country's uniting, and it's rallying around Trump and his Avengers. And God, what a freaking team, huh?
I mean, there are some defining moments in American politics, the recent history. I mean, one marker that really began to change things was President Clinton's election victory in '93. And we saw what happened in 2000 with such a divided nation, where there was such hostility against Republicans and George W. Bush for how dare him win in this particular case with not counting all the votes, which in reality they did count all the votes. They were just trying to manufacture more votes for him in 2000. But then you fast forward to Obama, and this is where things really began to escalate. And it escalated so much so that how dare Trump beat our anointed and preferred candidate, Hillary Clinton, in 2016. Oh, we have got to come out against Trump and weaponize government power to take him out. And that's what they have done with just an incredible amount of law breaking, all kinds of illegal tactics. I mean, I do hope that we do have Congressman Matt Gaetz. He recently retired as a congressman, but I still call him a congressman out of respect. That he would become the Attorney General, even if it's a recess appointment, and we certainly go in there and begin to deal with this, harsh reality that what we've got is we have an entrenched bureaucracy, and it goes back to this, I should say, media operations. The people in the Washington D.C. Beltway are completely disconnected from reality.
That's right.
Totally.
And we both lived there, right, for a long time. So we know them intimately, right?
Exactly.
And so let me pause you right there, because that's a great point. So I grew up in Potomac, Maryland, right? I grew up with all these people. I lived there pretty much my entire life until I was like 20. I went down to South America for a couple of years, did a tour down there, and then came back. I got married and came to Miami. It was supposed to be for 5 years, ended up being 20. And then eventually made it back. That's where me and you, connected again. And it was a very different place than the place that I grew up. The people had changed. The place had changed. There was something very, very different, fundamentally different from the place I grew up with, the people I grew up with. There was this, like you had mentioned earlier in this description, this hostility and almost vitriol towards anybody that was Republican or did not support, Obama or Clinton, or if you dared to even support Trump, then you were a racist and a hate monger and a xenophobe and a bigot and all kinds of things that were just amazing. I would put Trump signs in front of my house. Well, I went back in 2014, right, and I joined the Maryland GOP as a chair of the Hispanic Leadership Council, and we elected a Republican for the first time in a long time in the state of Maryland. And then I joined CNN as the Republican strategist, commentator, analyst during the 15 and 16 election. But during that period, it was just very, very crazy. So I know exactly what you're talking about. And my question with all that running around, what happened? What changed these people? Because there are people like me and you, remember?
Yeah. What happened here is, keep in mind, you had 8 years of the Clinton administration. Okay. So they brought in a lot of Democratic operatives, Democratic-leaning personnel. A lot of these government agencies began to be transformed more into a Democratic type of mentality. Yes, we had George W. Bush for 8 years, but keep in mind the unprecedented increase of government power at that time, with the Patriot Act, the reform of the intelligence community, the formation of the Department of Homeland Security, transformation of FBI, and then Obama won. So now you have 8 more years with Obama bringing in a lot of Democratic type people. And Obama's presidency, he had some very strong individuals that were able to stamp their personality into the bureaucracies. Eric Holder, Loretta Lynch. You had Clapper at the DNI, Brennan at the CIA. So by the time Trump came in, you really got to look at the perspective that in the past 24 years, it had been predominantly 16 years of Democratic presidents, infiltrating this federal bureaucracy and that entire area, because it's not just the federal bureaucrats, it's all the special interests, the lobbyists, the lawyers, the think tanks, technology as well increased significantly up in that area. So there's been just a total, complete transformation, and you see it in the voter demographics, but predominantly in Northern Virginia. Virginia, historically, was a deep red state.
Yeah.
But what transformed it into a blue state were those blue voters in those Northern Virginia counties, Loudoun County,
Yeah.
Arlington, Fairfax. I mean, those counties, the reason why Virginia is a blue state is because the voters in these three counties, Loudoun, Fairfax, Arlington, you also got to add Prince William's in there.
That's right, yeah.
Those four counties basically have so many voters that vote blue that it turns the state blue. And it's those people that moved up there during the Clinton, Obama timeframe that changed the landscape. And it's not just that Northern Virginia, but D.C. traditionally has been heavily Democratic, 93%.
Yeah.
And Maryland, you can say anything about Maryland, particularly the suburbs of Washington, D.C.
Yeah, we used to have a joke that you could fit all the D.C. Republicans in a phone booth, right? I mean, it was, 93%, like you said. But Maryland, look, I grew up in Maryland, and we used to call it the People's Republic, right? Because it was like 76% Democrat. But they became hostile. That's kind of what I'm saying. There was this shift where people stopped being friends with each other. I remember somebody, friends of one of my brothers, I'm not going to say who, but the wife called my sister-in-law and said, we can't be friends with you guys anymore because, so-and-so voted for Trump. So please don't have any contact with us ever again. I was like, holy shit. And this gal, my brother had hired as an intern 20 or 30 years ago. And, and with the husband and everybody, they were very, very close friends for decades. They hung out together, went on vacations together, everything. Great guys, great people. She was a lunatic, because I remember talking to her one day, and she said, yeah, women don't need men, period, ever. If we could create sperm, we wouldn't need men, because men are poisonous. Men are useless. Women don't need men. The problem with society is men. I was like, holy shit, she's a lesbian. But she was like, no, I'm not a lesbian, whatever. To not go off the rails here. But, these people really think that men are, what do they call it? Toxic masculinity, right?
Yeah.
And they created this thing and the feminization of men, where men are supposed to be weak and, almost effeminate, right? And that's kind of bizarre, dude, because that destroys civilization, right? That makes you weak. Look at everything that happened in the I know I'm going everywhere, but let's go back to you. You were talking about Brennan and all that stuff, CIA, how they mined all this. So there's this big thing that everybody talks about, and you're, I think, the most qualified person to either acknowledge it or to validate it or whatever, is that when Clinton came in, he destroyed the CIA.
Well, what had happened was the CIA had gone completely rogue, and certainly there were a lot of abuses of power that led to the Church Commission, the 1950s, 1960s Church Commission in the mid-70s, and that began to try to rein in the CIA. Reagan came in as president, and the CIA was unleashed again. The Iran...
Oh, I think we lost him. Let's see if we can get him back. Oh, man, he was just telling us a story. What a shame. And I wanted to ask him, too, because when he got into the 80s, that was a good era. Let's see what happened. Let's see if we can get him back on. We were just in the middle, too. Let's see. All right, let's see if he comes back in. See, that's the cool thing about a podcast, that it happens. It happens. It's authentic. There he is. He's going to reconnect. All right, cool. So we're going to ask him about something really cool, and I'm going to see if I can take him down this rabbit hole, which I don't know if any of you guys have seen, but I recommend you watch. It's called The Last Narc. You'll find it on Prime. It's the story about the kidnap, torture, and assassination of Special Agent DEA Kiki Camarena, and some of the problems that they talk about. Here we go, man. So you walked into the 80s. Take us to the 80s, and I got a very pinpointed question for you.
Okay. So, yeah, as I was saying, the CIA kind of got unleashed again in the 1980s with Ronald Reagan, with the Mujahideen, the Afghan war against the Soviet Union, the Sandinistas, the Iran-Contra issues in Central America, and particularly the Iran-Contra issues caused the CIA once again to fall under the radar of Congress to try to be reined in from abuses. So in the 1990s, there were some particularly cuts to the CIA. It wasn't necessarily neutered, but what happened was spending was cut. Personnel would retire, not necessarily be replaced. So you had a weakened CIA.
So let me ask you a question here before we go further in time. So you talked about something very important. You talked about Sandinistas, Contras, that era during the Reagan administration. I want to ask you about something. I don't know if you want to touch it or not, but it is out there. It is out there in public. The kidnapping, torture, and assassination of DEA Special Agent Kiki Camarena. If you saw The Last Narc, Special Agent Hector Bayeres accuses a CIA guy who, we know, Felix Rodriguez, as being the guy who turned over Kiki to the Guadalajara cartels for arms.
I'm not intimately familiar with a lot of these details, but I can tell you this, having worked counter-drug issues for the CIA, from CIA headquarters and out in the field, having worked with DEA, the world of informants is an extremely dirty world. You end up working with criminals. And, in some cases, it is sanctioned, approved contact, because you really have no choice to be able to infiltrate some of these criminal organizations.
And I was going to say, you can't go hire a priest, right?
You can't. And what happens here is sometimes the people that you are working with are a lot dirtier than you know. And they also will manipulate and lie to you. It's like when I was working in Afghanistan, working with Taliban, meeting Taliban, it's like they would always give us intelligence, but it's just quite not enough to go out, take out the leaders. It's kind of like if they're throwing
enough to
basically
survive and get paid. Enough to survive and keep getting paid, right?
Exactly. So the possibility that somebody that was working with the CIA was a dirty informant, turned around and passed out information to the cartels that led to the execution of a DEA agent is highly probable. It sadly it can happen. It's just a sad reality of working within these criminal organizations.
And I know a bunch, as you know, we've talked in the past, a bunch of folks at the agency and people at the DEA as well, friends, for decades. And look, I spoke to somebody pretty high up at DEA and asked him point blank. I said, dude, what do you think about this? And he goes, let me ask you, what do you think? And I said, man, you know what? I know so many people. I've, been traveling Latin America for 30 plus years. As you know, Pedro, you when you're in business, you run into, people like yourself, right? A lot, right? And, you get tapped on the shoulder and, things happen, right? So, I said, look, man, I know how it goes. I've been in bars in different countries, and somebody come up and feel me up to see if I'm, if I'm strapped, right? Dude, I know what happens. And he said, well, let me tell you, I've interviewed Hector over 20 times. And I said, okay, what do you think? And he goes, fuck, man, I don't know. But I'll give you my opinion in a year when I retire. So, you know what that means, right? It's fucked up, dude. Sorry, there I go again. I apologize. I'm a sinner. What can I tell you? But it's FUBAR, right? It's FUBAR. The CIA had a lot of problems, but at the same time, look, My dad, I think I told you how he came up, right? He was a civil engineer in Lima and, got recruited. He thought it was for an engineering company, ended up being an outfit. And he designed a lot of the nuclear fallout shelters for the U.S. government in the height of the Cold War, right, in 1960. And that's how, we migrated here. My family came here. So he knew a lot of his friends that were in there as well. And, he always told me, never join the agency or the DIA or the DEA, because they will abandon your ass in another country and nobody will come get you, And, and he said, don't do it. Do something else. If you want to be in law enforcement, be a fucking cop or the Bureau or Secret Service or something, So I never forgot that. I never forgot that. I remember at my house, I was telling you that my daughter wanted to join the agency, and you were like, no, don't go there. Don't go there. Let me tell you my story. And what a fucked up story it is. So let's go. We're in the 90s. George H.W. Bush.
So, okay, yep, 9/11 happens.
Yeah.
9/11 completely changed national security in the United States of America.
Yep.
The Patriot Act,
let's go back. So when Clinton comes in 96, right? I understand that he gutted or changed the rules where, officers, clandestine officers like yourself couldn't use criminals, right? Or bad people as informants anymore, right?
Well, the reality is that the rules are already in place. It's Executive Order 12333. And from that executive order that governs intelligence operations for CIA, for FBI, and also other intelligence collections authorities, it's further refined by what is called as the Attorney General Guidelines. Most recently, they were updated in the late 2000, I think it was 2018, 2019, somewhere in that time frame. So, you can work with criminals, but it requires exceptional approvals that go all the way up the chain of command, not just to the CIA, but Department of Justice and potentially the White House. So ultimately, if you work with a criminal, it's because it's sanctionally approved. There are a lot of historical figures out there that have been very dirty, but the U.S. government has had relations with them because they really have no choice. You can talk terrorists like Yasser Arafat. Yeah. That's just probably the biggest example. It was known he was a terrorist.
Right.
He had blood in his hands. But still, the U.S. government would deal with him given his position. This is an extreme example. But Bill Clinton didn't necessarily neuter the CIA from that perspective. It's just that at that time frame, the way, world events were going, the reality was that, post-1980s, the end of the Cold War, the end of the Afghan Mujahideen, Soviet invasion of Afghanistan, just began to diminish the funding for intelligence operations, the intelligence agencies, and people would retire and not be replaced. But you go to 9/11, and that just changed everything. Now, basically, the spigot was opened, money was poured in, and people began to pour into these agencies, beefing up the intelligence community writ large, with not just personnel, but enhanced powers.
That's amazing, man. That's so. How do you get into this? How do you get into the intel world? What's your story? I know it's a fascinating story. We've talked about it in the past, but let's hear it and really hear, because it's important. Because you mentioned something that was really key for a lot of people, and a lot of people's head exploded when they saw Matt Gaetz for Attorney General. And you applauded that, right? And so did I, by the way. I was like, shit, that's going to be a fucking tough one. But, man, if we can get him in there, we might actually get the opportunity. Maybe, like Don Jr. said it, I think, over the weekend. He said it might be a once-in-a-generational opportunity to really clean the government out right now with Trump and the Avengers, right? And, man, if we can get Matt Gaetz in there, I know that he would. You saw him go after, Garland. You saw him go after Ray. You've seen him go after everybody on all these many different issues. I know you have your own experience and bias with the DOJ and the rest. So let's hear it, man. Let's hear it. Let's no holds barred.
Well, I'll speak about Matt Gaetz and to get to my story here. You are right. We have a potentially once in a lifetime opportunity to fundamentally transform government, return it to we the people,
Yeah.
instead of allow it to be a government of elites
Yep.
enforcing their will upon the people, of we the people pushing upward for the government to basically be there for the people. And it's going to take a hard charging person like Matt Gaetz to go into the chief law enforcement officer position and begin to root out the rot and corruption inside the Department of Justice. And not only the Department of Justice, but obviously the FBI that falls under the Department of Justice, but more so even as far out as the individual district courts where the state attorneys are located in their staffs. And on top of that, you got to keep in mind that there are so many government lawyers embedded in the different government agencies, like the CIA Office of General Counsel, the Director of National Intelligence Office of General Counsel, the FBI Office of General Counsel.
Why are those positions important, Pedro?
What was that again?
Why are those positions important?
Well, what happens here is, in my case...
Yeah, and I don't mean to guide you straight into your story, so if you want to just push them aside and to later, that's fine.
I blew the whistle. I followed policies, procedures required by me to internally blow the whistle. And the biggest problem I ran into was corrupt government lawyers seeking to defraud me of my whistleblower rights, of my equal employment opportunity rights, civil rights, defraud me of the protections through basically civil right law violations, conspiracy to obstruct justice, denial of due processes, all orchestrated and led by corrupt government lawyers in the CIA Office of General Counsel, or lawyers that were speaking on behalf of the CIA Inspector General, or lawyers that were speaking on behalf of the Equal Employment Opportunity Office.
And what's your motivation? What's your motivation to do that? Is it political?
Basically, destroy any liabilities for the agency. I was basically scalp. It's like, this is the victory for us. We defeated a claim.
Wow.
We don't care if it destroys a life. We want to defend the agency, even if it destroys a life and a career.
That's amazing.
So they will break the law to cover up.
And DOJ has jurisdiction over these offices, right? The DOJ has jurisdiction over these offices.
Well, what happens here, these bureaucrats are protected and shielded from lawsuits of all types.
Yeah.
They can basically claim that they were acting without prejudice under basically, the best interest of these agencies, and they can claim basically they were unaware of details. So they are shielded and protected in part. I would blame it on Congress, because the biggest weakness that we have had in all these problems as far as the weaponization of government power has been that lever of accountability from Congress has been missing. Congress has engaged in a lot of showmanship, political theater, grandstanding, just, have a committee hearing, beat and berate, Garland or whoever it may be, go out on the campaign trail and say, look what we're doing. We sent this letter here. We sent that letter there. We issued this report. But year in and year out, they keep funding these agencies and don't cut any of the funding to some of these rogue elements of some of these offices that clearly have violated the law, or for that matter, not used their powers to dock the pay from criminals. We've had, leaders like Eric Holder, Clapper, Brennan, and who knows who else, who has lied to Congress, literally lied, and yet they're never prosecuted at all.
So how corrupt is the intelligence community? Because that's the big thing that people have been talking about for a while, right? That seems to be the thing. Is it fair or unfair? Is it widespread, or is it just isolated at the top by political appointees?
It's become predominantly politicized at the higher levels. And in part, it goes back to that, 8 years of Clinton, 8 years of Bush. But the reality is, keep in mind the unprecedented powers granted the intelligence community, then 8 years of Obama, bringing in powerful people like Clapper and Brennan. So they promote their own kind. If you want to move up the ranks, you got to play ball by their rules. Keep your mouth shut. You got to be pro agency, be a good bureaucrat. Don't embarrass the bureaucracy. And sadly, I mean, it's become politicized to the point that they have put politics above the national interest, above national security. And in this process, if someone like myself would blow the whistle, they would certainly be crushed by the state. My movie talks about one particular case, John Kiriakou. John Kiriakou was the CIA whistleblower on the torture and rendition. But the reality is that he blew the whistle on an interview on TV. The Department of Justice immediately opened an investigation based on a criminal referral from the CIA. The Department of Justice looked into the matter and sent a letter to John Kiriakou's attorney closing the case, letting them know that John Kiriakou did not break the law. He did not leak intelligence information. It was widely known that the CIA had engaged in torturing of prisoners based on, Amnesty International, the Red Cross, all sorts of reporting out there publicly available. In comes John Brennan. This shows you the perfect example of basically politicized power at a high level. Yep. John Brennan was a senior advisor for President Obama. He hated John Kiriakou. He went to the FBI and the Department of Justice and demanded that they reopen the investigation. And when the FBI basically told them, we really don't have a case here, John Brennan's answer, and we know this because of discovery in John Kiriakou's legal case, where documents they obtained. And there is a public available press article on this matter. John Brennan ordered the FBI and the Department of Justice, I don't care, charge him with something. Wow. So the FBI and the Department of Justice cooked up, trumped up allegations. And you know what they do? They do their stacked indictments, where they make it extremely expensive for you to try to defend yourself. Well, so they know that he had limited financial means.
Yeah, they burn you out or bankrupt you, right? So you got to plead a deal. Yeah.
So it led to a plea deal where he pled guilty to a minor crime that it wasn't even a crime and was never prosecuted for that matter. So, he is a convicted felon because John Brennan politicized and abused his position. And that's a perfect example of how they play this game in Washington, D.C.
Can that be cleaned up, Pedro? Can we clean
that up? What was that?
Can that be fixed? Can that be cleaned up?
In my opinion, the number one way you can fix this is, I wouldn't use the word retribution. I would use the word accountability. And accountability means you go back and you fix these problems for the people that have been severely damaged, like John Kiriakou. And at the same time, you go and you prosecute people like John Brennan for the violation of the civil rights of someone like John Kiriakou. Without those two elements of restoration for the aggrieved and prosecution for those who were weaponizing the law, that you really can't clean it up because it can continue to happen.
Yeah, and, that's a good point that you bring it up is, let's separate one thing from another, accountability to retribution, right? Because there's a lot of folks that we all know, that we both know, I had a friend of mine recently talking to him, former, intelligence, special forces guy, and he said, the only way we fix this is we got to go in there and fucking destroy them. We got to fucking destroy them because if we don't destroy them, it's never going to end. It'll just never end. It's like the freaking bully in the playground. He just comes after you. You're like, nah, dude, I don't want to fight. And he smashes you in the face. And you're like, dude, that was mean. That's uncool. Don't do that again. And then he punches you again the next day. And he keeps on doing it. He's never going to stop till you beat the living shit out of him, right? So that's what he was saying. He's like, we need to go into D.C. and beat the living shit out of them and fucking destroy these fucking left-wing radicals and send them to the dustbins of history, like Brennan used to like to call it, right? And then we'll be over it because then there's no coming back from that.
Now, there's an element of truth there. And how you do it is you apply the law
Yeah.
with the full force and fury of the law against the guilty
I'm pretty
offender.
sure you would like some justice served as well, right? I know a lot of people that are seeking retribution, right, or justice, if you want to call it that. How do you? I guess my question to you. I mean, look, you found God, and you're in a different position right now in life. But what do you say to all the other people like yourself that say, no, let's go in there and fucking bury him?
I mean, again, there is an element of truth there. There has to be that lever of accountability, the hammer of the law. If somebody goes out and commits murder,
Oh.
I mean, even if that person is remorseful, they're still going to pay a price for their act of murder. There may be some leniency as far as in the sentence, but the point is that if we do not hold these abuses of government accountable, it literally opens the door for more abuses of power in the future.
And
if you looked at how we got to where we're at now, I mean, these abuses of power didn't just start overnight. This has been going on. I would say that it really began to increase under the Obama administration. Fast and Furious, the IRS scandal, the Benghazi. There was no accountability at all for the abuses. Hillary Clinton and her emails, no accountability whatsoever.
None.
So as a result of no accountability, it emboldened these government actors to come up with Russia Crossfire Hurricane. And, when that didn't work, they continued to weaponize government power to the extent of having the audacity to basically try to prosecute President Trump on classified documents, when the reality is that he is not the only guilty offender as an ex-president to potentially have some classified documents.
And besides, as a president, he has the authority to declassify whatever the hell he wants.
On top of that, that's also true.
So what's the crime? It was all bullshit. It was absolute lawfare. I think it's very dangerous, what we've been living through, and I don't know if you've heard of Patrick Byrne. I don't know if you've seen his book or his stories. It's very interesting, the stuff that he talks about, how he was dealing with FBI, and his chain of command was actually Peter Strzok and Andy McCabe and Comey. And at the end, he goes as far as saying that the person that approved this entire shit show was President Obama himself.
Yeah.
When he was trying to set a trap to see how far it could go and to have some kind of evidence to protect himself, he said he was going to go kill this Russian spy.
Personally, in my opinion,
Yep.
There needs to be that lever of accountability, the full force and fury of the law to hold all these individuals accountable, even if it includes prosecuting former President Obama.
Wow. That's crazy. So your story. So you started in the CIA how?
Well,
because everybody's got a story, and it's always an interesting one. Did you get recruited at university? Where?
I actually predated 9/11.
Okay.
I was a student at Florida International University, going to school at night while I work full time. I was one of those late bloomers who I had to work. I spent 14 years working in the Miami business world, perishable commodities, grocery products, the fresh produce, fresh meat, eventually, fresh flowers. Had a brief stint doing telecommunications, but for the most part, it was all perishable commodities. And I finally was able to put myself back in school at night. And towards the end of my undergraduate years at FIU, the CIA recruiters for the Director of Intelligence, Directorate of Analysis that is known today, came to the university, and I met with them. They were impressed with my credentials, my language skills, my work history, my academic training, academic grades. Basically, I had straight A's. And they were amazed at, how can you handle all this? You're working full time, you're going to school almost 3/4 time. So they gave me an offer to come in as a graduate fellow, which means I would go up to the DC area as a temporary appointment where I would basically work part-time, 32 hours a week for the most part, and go to school at night. So I started like that, just a graduate fellow. basically working part-time 32 hours a week, going to school again, this time almost full-time with George Washington University.
So you went to GW. So you went from FIU to GW.
From FIU to GW.
And GW is a great school, by the way. One of the best, man. So congratulations.
Thank you. And I graduated from FIU summa cum laude, double major political science and international relations. I continued my studies in political science, but a specialty, security policy studies, more the security aspects of political science.
Walk us through that degree.
What was that again?
Walk us through that degree.
All right. So it was, they have the Elliott School of International Relations. And it's a school that does pretty much, international politics, international relations, defense policy, regional studies. So I went in under the security policy studies that does basically national security, defense issues, intelligence, counterterrorism, and, political psychology related to counterterrorism. And it was a lot of reading and writing, and, persistence of, just taking your classes, doing your assignments, turning in your papers will get you the degree. But I graduated 3.5 GPA, pretty decent standing. And because I graduated, it opened the door for me to become a regular staff CIA employee.
So question.
But here's where I'm a product of 9/11.
Question on this, on the degree. So, because I ask a lot of people this, especially in the intel field, is when you go to school for this stuff, and when the rubber meets the road, how real was everything you learned?
Well, thankfully, there was an element of reality from the policy perspective of the degree, because we had adjunct professors who had worked in defense and intelligence. So they were able to bring in some of their life experiences and tailor some of the assignments or the readings that we did to be very realistic.
And that's more DC than any other university, right? So you're only going to get that in DC.
No, because there are certain schools scattered throughout the United States that will reflect some of this, the specialist type adjunct professors that come in. But for the most part, if you want to get this kind of specialized training, you're right. You have to go to either George Washington University, the American University, Georgetown, or Johns Hopkins.
And Hopkins has got a great program too. Yep.
Yeah, those four schools are really the places to go if you want to go and be in some kind of national security related type career field.
Yep, that's amazing. So you graduate, you join the CIA, and now you're a staff officer, correct?
Yeah, 9/11 opened the spigot of hiring, so that pretty much guaranteed me the ability to become a career employee. So under 9/11, I was able to basically get a job as a career analyst.
And you're in clandestine services, right?
Started as an analyst in the Directorate of Intelligence, the Directorate of Analysis, as it's known today. So I was just an analyst. I was actually working counter-drug issues, Central America and the Caribbean.
Yep.
So it was a position where it was just a significant amount of reading, research, sifting through all sources of intelligence, whether it's open, clandestine human to SIGINT, the defense-related, DEA, or whatever it may be, State Department. And you basically would turn that information into intelligence analysis, what it meant. I was able to write some president's daily briefs, write some papers for senior principals in the president's cabinet. And after doing that for 4 years, that's where things changed. I volunteered for Iraq. The Iraq war came into the picture. And I volunteered to go out to Iraq, and that just opened a whole new, different dimension for me. And
Tell us
that's
about
basically
that. Tell us about that experience, because that's how it starts, right? That's where the problems start.
Well, what happened with me is, I found out the hard way that first and foremost, the CIA is a bureaucracy. I got caught in a crossfire between the Directorate of Operations on one side and the Directorate of Analysis on the other side. The war in Iraq created a significant need for people to go out and volunteer to fight this war.
And you guys are a really small team, right? The CIA had a really small presence, right?
Well, I mean, eventually the CIA would have the largest station in Baghdad.
No,
And not only Baghdad, they had bases throughout Iraq.
no.
So, I mean, they had a serious problem filling positions. So, analysts like myself were trying to volunteer to go out to Iraq. I actually applied for a job for the Directorate of Operations in Iraq.
Wow.
And the Directorate of Intelligence sat on the job for 6 months and finally responded after 6 months telling me and the Director of Operations, no, we won't let him go.
Wow.
That's just how bureaucratic this mess was. Eventually, I was able to get out there on a temporary duty assignment. And once I got out there, it was a very fluid situation. And
Okay.
keep in mind that, early 2000, there were a lot of seasoned veterans working for the CIA who had, 20, 30 years of experience.
Yeah.
People who, had prior life experiences before going into the CIA, business people, military personnel, police officers, you name it. So I went out into a very eclectic group of people out in Baghdad. And, they realized that, this guy's got a heck of a lot more talent than just, being an analyst sitting at a desk. So they moved some personnel around and they put me in charge of an office at the station where I would have the senior liaison duties of being in constant communication with military personnel and other U.S. government offices.
Wow.
And they actually went back to headquarters and says, we want him to permanently fill this position on what's known as a permanent change of station. So,
So is that like a station chief?
it wasn't a station chief.
Okay.
It was a chief of a branch.
Okay, gotcha.
And what turned out to be a 3-month temporary duty trip turned out to be a job of 28 months of being out.
Wow.
In Iraq. Yeah, we would take breaks. I had a break of 6 weeks twice when I went back from my temporary assignment to be able to go out on a permanent change of station. And then while I was out there on the permanent change of station, they would give us what's known as relaxation tour, rest and relaxation, R&Rs, time off. So I would have some time off. But ultimately, 2 years of my CIA career was basically work in Iraq, out in the field.
That's amazing.
And I left Iraq, I think, with 4 exceptional performance awards, high accolades. And in my time there, I worked with, I think it was 3 or 4 chief of stations, 3 or 4 deputy chief of stations, like 3 chief of operations, a bunch of senior officers that eventually would rise up and be prominent players inside the Directorate of Operations. So this opened the door for me to go back to Washington, D.C., take the Director of Operations officer course to become certified as an operations officer, to send me back out to the field for another 2 years doing it basically was like a quasi war zone. I mean, it was a war. We were fighting a war, but it wasn't an open declared war zone. So I went for another type of war zone.
You can't disclose the location, right?
It's kind of funny. I found a creative way to name the country in my book. In my book, the country is named Carmenia. Yeah. and anybody that reads, the chapters, for my time in Carmenia, they'll figure it out.
That's right. That's right. That's always interesting. How it's like, you can get close, but you can't say it, but you can, kind of guide them there, take them to the water. And now if they drink, it's their problem, right?
Yeah, the water is there. You can drink from it if you want to.
That's right. That's right. And that book is available where?
Amazon is going to be the best bet paperback because Amazon does an outstanding job for self-published authors. And if you go to my website, pedroisraelhorta.com, there are links there on the website. Or you can just go to Amazon and look for Pedro Israel Horta or The Broken Whistle, A Deep State Run Amok. So that's the best play. But I mean, if you wanted to
when are we going to find the Audible version so we can listen to you tell the story? I guess we're listening to it now, right? So
I've had to do this self-published for a variety of reasons, but I will tell you that I held nothing back to ensure this is very high quality. Awesome. I mean, this went through a significant amount of editing, copy editing, proofreading, typesetting, design, professional designer. So I'm going to end up having to do the Audible version myself.
Awesome.
I'm thinking that finally I'll be able to get that done sometime next year.
That's awesome. I love that, man. I love that. I can't wait to hear that. That's going to be a lot of fun. I mean, we've talked about that so many times in person, right? That actually hearing it again will be fascinating. So you're back in DC. You're taking this course.
So I took the course. I went out to the field. I went from a station of excellence in Baghdad. Truly, I mean, I work with exceptional people. It's a fact. I mean, these people were very, very intelligent. They were very astute. They would shift personnel around. They would deal with problems immediately. They also got it. I mean, we were dealing with life and death issues daily. We couldn't be playing around. Throw office politics out the door. I mean, there were very little issues of office politics. Yeah, there may have been some personality clashes, but, dealing with life and death issues, no matter if there were differences in personality, people found a way to work together. Well, I end up in this country, Carmenia, and now I'm working for who I name in my book, basically, Mo, Larry, and Curly. Duh. Because they were basically three stooges. Oh, they honestly were not qualified.
You can't go through life without running into those three at some point in your career, right?
I mean, this was a station of just. Being creative. It was a station in name only. So I called it in the book Potemkin Station, in honor of Gregory Potemkin, the minister of the Russian government back in the, I think it was like maybe 1800s, where he went around doing visits to places and they just had nothing but props for him so he can go tell the people everything is fine. So my point is, I did extremely well. I got promoted. I had high accolades from the people I was working with, but some manager at this station decided that we want to replace Pedro with somebody else. So they started basically cooking up false allegations of performance issues. They put me on a performance improvement plan, and I start meeting the plan. So now they start basically stopping me from meeting the plan, and I still meet the plan. And ultimately, even though I met the plan, they still want me out of there. So
do you know why? Do you know what the reasoning was? Was it a personality thing, or was it, they had a buddy that they wanted to bring in, or was it because you were too close to figuring out some other stuff was happening?
There was some stuff going on in that station where some people there.
That's usually the case, right?
So one officer there reportedly may have been banging prostitutes with, other people who they work with in that country. And I ran into a situation where one of the programs for one of the people working from that country got compromised. As soon as I reported the compromise of that program is when all of a sudden I had problems. At the same time, the number 3 officer in that station had a trainee, an officer that he trained at the operational tradecraft course, who he wanted that officer to take my job. So it gets very complicated. At the same time, the number 2 officer at this station reportedly may have been suffering from what's a bipolar disorder.
Oh, my God.
So, that's why I call them Mo, Larry, and Curly. So some of the stories are just horrible as far as what was going on in that station.
Did anybody lose their life?
What was that?
Did anybody lose their life? Did anybody get compromised to the point where somebody got killed or kidnapped?
Nobody lost their life here. But the truth of the reality is that the mission and the job significantly suffered. And there was a significant amount of underperformance, not from me, but in our ability to leverage our tools, the money, the personnel to make things happen in that country. And it was all done basically to kick me out. But, I knew that this was totally illegal. There were certainly harassment issues, equal employment opportunity issues here. There were certainly issues of having blown the whistle. And I had a lot more at stake than just my career. I had met a Carmenian woman. We had a child expected on the way, my daughter. So it's like, not only that, they had agreed to allow me to stay there for 3 years. So now they're taking my third year away. So I ended up consulting with senior officers at CIA headquarters as far as what's going on here. And the advice they gave me was to file an equal employment opportunity complaint, which was the right thing to do. But unfortunately, unknown to me is that the Equal Employment Opportunity Office, this is probably the best analogy that I can use. Imagine if there's a crime. You have a crime scene. You've got, the murder weapon, you've got the blood stains, you've got the dead body, you've got everything that points to a crime occurred. The crime scene comes in and does an investigation. After the crime scene unit has come in and done its investigation, you got the cleanup crew that comes in and cleans everything up, sanitizes everything, and it leaves it like if nothing happened. Yep. Equal Employment Opportunity to CIA, instead of being a crime scene investigation unit, was a cleanup crew that basically came in to clean up the crime scene, make it believe that nothing went wrong.
Wow.
So they did absolutely nothing for me. They basically destroyed my career in operations, because even though I was doing operational work and I was on an operational job, on paper, because of the way the bureaucracy works, I was still actually an analyst for the Directorate of Intelligence. So they ended up writing this atrocious performance appraisal that anybody who would read it could compare it with the other one. And it's like, wait a moment, you just promoted this officer. This officer did X, Y, and Z. Now, in this rating period, he did much more than he previously had done. And in this particular case, you're basically saying that he underperformed, and there were lies in there. So, I had to be very creative on how to salvage my career. At that point in time, I knew that if I would go back to CIA headquarters, it was a death sentence. I would go back to CIA headquarters and never see the light of day in the field. So I pushed hard, and I was able to find a job in Afghanistan, 2010. We're in a big push in Afghanistan.
Yep.
So I end up going to Afghanistan in 2010 to be a counterintelligence referent. And, I rehabilitated.
What does that mean? What does that role do?
Counterintelligence has different aspects. You have offensive counterintelligence and you have defensive counterintelligence. For the most part, counterintelligence is defensive, which is to protect the CIA. In this particular case, the base where I was at, our officers, from infiltration of, saboteurs, people who would basically try to kill us, like the suicide bomber in Coast in 2009, making sure that, the assets we're meeting are not plants, they're not doubles, flipped, turned against us, making sure that they are who they say they are, they have the access they claim to have. Then there's an element of counterintelligence that works at defense of the base, security of the base, working with the security elements, vetting of the security guards, and so forth. So I had a significant position in basically ensuring the safety of our officers and our operations from death and life threats the entire year, And again, I distinguished myself in that job. And from there on, I end up back at CIA headquarters. And again, I had to be very careful where I would go because I'm still on paper an intelligence analyst. And I find out that they don't want to transfer me to the operations field, the operations career service, because of that bad performance appraisal in Carmenia, despite the fact that I hadn't done any Director of Intelligence work since July of 2004. From July 2004 all the way to, beginning of 2011, it was all operational work. So I ended up working as a technical targeting officer doing technical operations, technical counterterrorism, seek, find, and finish type operations to find the bad guys. And,
very cool. Very cool. Can you tell us some stories? Anything that you can tell?
The fix, find, and finish. There's several ways of fixing, finding, and finishing.
I can imagine.
There's different levels of finishing somebody. Some people, you can help them find their virgins early in life.
Yep.
Others, you can help them find the authorities and, get a nice, shall we say, greeting in jail.
Yep.
And, it was basically putting away bad guys. The stories here go into my travels. I can't name the country,
Sure.
but if you read the chapter, you'll find out exactly what country it is. So I ended up taking multiple trips to a specific country in the Middle East. And my goodness, the things we found. My favorite story is, we worked pretty secluded tight in the, the embassy where we're at. And, we lived at a hotel basically a few blocks away. But, getting a haircut, there was a barbershop right outside the embassy. And, you would go in, and they always had local police officers. One time, I went in to get my haircut, and you found the local police officers just sitting down chewing khat, which is it's a weed, kind of like coca, that gets them a little high. And they're chewing khat, and this police officer pulls out his Glock, and he's waving his Glock around like, "Look at my gun! I got a pretty gun," And it's like, hey, wait a moment. I go, "Oh, I don't speak the local language."
Right.
So I just hand my hand like, "Hey, can I see your gun?" I pick his gun out. I do a function check. Great. There's not a bullet in the chamber here. And I, close it and I give it back to him, and it's, I'm keeping my eyes on him to make sure he doesn't chamber that round.
Yeah.
Because if he would chamber that round, I would be out of there fast.
Yeah, I can imagine. Oh, my God. That's crazy. So shit hits the fan when?
Well, I distinguished myself in my technical targeting position. I end up getting 2 more exceptional performance awards.
And you were there for how long?
I did that for 3.5 years.
Nice.
3.5 years doing the technical targeting thing.
Very nice. That must have been some
and finally, through a high-level officer at the CIA who knew me from my time in Baghdad, I was able to transfer to the Director of Operations. So I was now a fully certified Director of Operations officer. And I competed for a job, Deputy Chief of Base in a base in Afghanistan. And it was the perfect job for me because I had all the training, all the experience, the years of working with, the military, with other government agencies. I had distinguished myself doing that kind of job. I had received 2 nominations at the CIA, one for the entire Director of Operations for my ability to collaborate and work with other government agencies and throughout the CIA. Similarly, another collaboration award within the specific big office I was working at, the Information Operations Center, for that matter. And I got the job. I began doing all the training.
Nice.
I go through all the senior leadership seminars, senior leadership training classes. I individually meet with all the senior leaders for the division, South Asia division. They tell me exactly what they want. And I get out to Afghanistan. And as soon as I get out there, it's quite obvious that I got a serious problem to deal with here. Ultimately,
In what sense?
This can be a really long story, so I'm going to have to be kind of wise how I say it so I don't lose people. So but the bottom line is that, they put in a chief of base in that position that didn't have the experience, the qualifications, the training, the deployments in a war zone. And this person could not handle the dirt, the lack of quality food, the separation from family, the noise, couldn't even handle the dangers of indirect rocket fire that would, indiscriminately attack us. So they basically turned the base into a social club on steroids, adopting sons to, emotionally compensate for their inability to cope. And I confirmed this with a regional psychological officer that visited the base. I explained everything to him. It's like, look, this is what I have encountered here. I'm dealing with this person who is doing X, Y, Z. And in this process, our lives were being in danger because we were doing reckless moves for food yoga classes.
Oh my God.
We weren't meeting with the military at times because we were so busy socializing at the base. And more importantly, we were causing an environment, not me, this is chief of base, where a subordinate and another subordinate too, where we're basically getting into a situation where one was being marginalized and harassed. So ultimately, the regional psychological officer, instead of dealing with the situation, dumps it on me.
Ugh.
And, Pedro, you need to go to your superior above her and tell him these things. So I ended up having to report to the superior these issues, an act of blowing the whistle. That's how I became a whistleblower, an accidental whistleblower for that matter, doing my job. And, they didn't want to hear what I had to say. They did nothing about it. Eventually I would have to confront in a polite way this lady. And as the psychologist said, she wouldn't get it. She wouldn't understand, which I knew. She didn't get it. So the situation continues to deteriorate until one day, the older officer who was being marginalized and harassed and the younger officer who is the adopted son who is preferred by her get into a spat. It was a minor spat, no big deal. Could have easily have been resolved at the base. But, at that point, I had to have even a more frank conversation with her. And at this point, she gets offended and starts falsely accusing the older officer of drawing a weapon. Now, he's under investigation for being a bad officer, for having drawn a weapon and so forth. And ultimately, at this point in time, I had a decision to make, It wasn't a matter of picking sides. It's not me picking this older officer over the chief of base. It's picking a side of the truth and doing what is right. They were expecting
that's the oath,
me.
right? That's the oath as well, right?
Yeah. You take an oath of office to defend and protect the Constitution of the United States of America, not the bureaucracy, or for that matter, anybody within the bureaucracy. There were EEO violations on 2 counts against, the older officer and then eventually against me for having spoken up for him. Amazing. By speaking up for him, what they did is they basically kicked him out and kicked me out of the base. Wow. At this point in time, I had already become a whistleblower, blowing the whistle to my superior, but more importantly, to the chief of station. On my way out of that base, the chief of station got everything. We even had a 45-minute video teleconferencing session because I couldn't meet him face to face because the threat was so large,
right? You can't
so significant
move around.
that I couldn't get in a car to go from the airport to the station downtown where it was at. So, I also passed everything to the Equal Employment Opportunity Office, which is not the crime scene investigator, but the cleanup crew.
Yeah.
So I end up, the last words by the chief of station were, take your leave, go home, leave. We'll sort this out and we'll get back to you. A week after being home, I get called to CIA headquarters. I have no idea why I'm going in there. The same day I'm supposed to go in there, the Equal Employment Officer calls me. So I meet with him briefly before my meeting with the management team for this division. And the Equal Employment Opportunity Officer either never read anything I sent to him or had no interest in hearing anything. To him, it was a good thing that basically I'm home. I was the problem. I meet with the senior team for this particular office, and they say, you're not going back to Afghanistan. They wouldn't give me a reason. I end up taking an extra week of leave. I go back to CIA headquarters to nothing but hell. I call it basically going back to the pit of hell, because here is when all hell breaks loose. I'm back at CIA headquarters, and the entire bureaucracy is hell-bent on destroying me, getting me to quit literally the CIA and leave. They're trying to kill all the EEO issues. They're trying to kill all the whistleblower reprisal issues. EEO is just useless, trying to kill the case, not cooperating, not helping me find information, telling me basically to go pound sand. At the same time, the Inspector General has no interest in hearing anything. They're saying this is an EEO issue when it's not. The grievance officer basically washes hands of this and dump it to EEO. At the same time, human resources had no interest in helping. And sadly, the worst thing about this is that, I'm in a single income household, with my foreign national wife that's now a U.S. citizen and a young daughter. And we desperately needed to put my young daughter in a special needs school at the time. And, it's expensive to live in the D.C. area, extremely expensive, as you know, on a single income. So, I find myself in a situation where my low bar for resolution, all I asked for was just give me a follow-on job and, fix this ridiculous performance appraisal full of lies. They didn't want to do any of that. They basically were trying to get me to quit. And, sadly, there were many jobs they could have given me that I was qualified to do, ready to go out and do and deploy, including one in Carmenia. And they, rather than give me the job, they will continually advertise it, re-advertise it, and never fill it. So I end up basically getting chased out of CIA, taking a rotational assignment with the Office of Inspector General for the Intelligence Community. And this just opens up another can of worms. I can keep on talking, but I'll turn it over to you.
No, absolutely. It's fascinating, man. And it just shows the level of corruption within the bureaucracy and how politicized I think all of these agencies have become. I mean, we go back to, the stuff that you mentioned, the Russian collusion, Russian hoax with the FBI. And you look at some of these players that were involved in all that stuff that, were involved during your tenure, like Brennan and Clapper and Mueller and all those guys. I don't know if it's really going to be able to get cleaned up. I think Matt Gaetz is probably the right guy for the job. And I think Ratcliffe over at the agency is a pretty good move. And if we can get Kash Patel, I think at the FBI, man, that would be pretty. What do you think about Tulsi?
Well, I mean,
or do you want to talk about some of the other ones? That's fine.
Let me briefly go into what I experienced next, which will actually set up to answer those questions.
Perfect.
And I'll tell you why. Because whereas I was dealing with basically, the internal CIA matters.
Yep.
Now, when I start working for the Office of Inspector General for the Intelligence Community, I got exposed to a much higher level and see how the intelligence community manipulates Congress. So Congress gives them what they want. At the same time, how they manipulate, whistleblower matters to Congress to basically subvert the rights of whistleblowers. So I end up working on a team where we evaluate whistleblower protections. And right from the get-go, one of the senior leaders, who's an acting leader for the Inspector General, is trying to shape the narrative and say that reprisal protections are working. The team, we have a very, straightforward plan that, follows all the bureaucratic check marks, as far as what we got to do this right. And we find that the agencies are not implementing whistleblower protections. They don't know what standards to use. They're watering down the standards. They're not following the timelines. So basically, whistleblowers are being defrauded of their whistleblower rights. And
so it's a widespread issue.
A widespread issue, exactly. Which is the reason why, Edward Snowden leaked to the press, because he knew this process doesn't work. As, Francis Drake, William Binney, predecessors to Snowden, who had tried blowing the whistle on, surveillance abuses, and state power was turned against them. Francis Drake, actually, was prosecuted. He had ended up doing a plea deal. But my point is, these processes are completely broken. And instead of trying to get the truth out, now they're trying to shut this thing down. And they claim I had a conflict of interest. They kick me out of the IG, send me back to the CIA. At this point in time, the evaluation got completely shut down. This got leaked out in the press. I didn't even know that this thing got shut down until I read the press report.
Amazing.
The Daily Beast put out an article in February of 2018 that says, the spies shut down, a whistleblower investigation. They literally just shut it all down. So I end up back at CIA. And whereas before I had blown the whistle internally, CIA, now I'm forced to begin to blow the whistle at higher levels. And this is where we get into really some of the serious corruption issues.
Hey, Pedro, let's. I need to pause for a second for a commercial break, but we're going to be right back. Mr. Producer, tee it up.
Because of your overwhelming support, our 1488 MyPillow has been one of the biggest sales in MyPillow history. I couldn't think of a better way to say thank you than to extend our wholesale pricing through Christmas. Get a classic standard MyPillow for only $14.88. Upgrade to a queen size, just $18.88. King size, only $1 more. Get my body pillows for only $29.88. And ready? Multi-use MyPillows, only $9.88. It's perfect time to stock up for Christmas gifts for everyone on your list. Go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to take advantage of our wholesale pricing, including my classic standard MyPillows, only $14.88. But that's not all. I'm so confident you're going to love our classic MyPillows that I'm going to extend my 60-day money-back guarantee until March 1st, 2025. Plus, orders over $75 ship absolutely free.
Don't forget mypillow.com. Use promo code IGH. And also, when I was talking to Pedro about Patrick Byrne, don't forget to visit enemywithindocuseries.com and use promo code IGH. It's a docuseries, 3 parts about Patrick Byrne's story, how he was used by the intelligence community to set up Hillary Clinton and others and got sucked right in the middle of the whole Russian hoax. It is a fascinating story. An $18 million bribe to Hillary Clinton. And at the end, like I was telling Pedro earlier, the person that greenlighted this whole shit show and fiasco and lie was President Obama. So you got to watch it. Very interesting. Pedro.
So after I get sent back to CIA, this is where we start getting into the deeper corruption and the high-level shenanigans within the intelligence community, and where personnel matters as far as appointments are very relevant as far as how can we clean up these agencies. So at this point, I begin having to blow the whistle to the acting Inspector General for the intelligence community. I use the Intelligence Community Whistleblower Protection Act, which is a process by federal law, Congressional Act, 1998. And what I reported to the Inspector General, he's got 2 weeks to report to the Director of National Intelligence. After 3 weeks, the Director of National Intelligence, after he's made a determination whether or not.
Go ahead.
Whether or not this is a, an actual disclosure.
Yep.
It has to be sent to Congress. So when I follow up with the acting Inspector General, no response, crickets, nothing.
Wow.
By this time, a lawsuit had been filed by my attorney. I had a lower level employment attorney who found a creative way to file a lawsuit.
And you were using an alias or something like that in the lawsuit, right? Not your real name and all that, right?
I was still undercover at the CIA.
Right.
So you're right. I had to use an alias, and it goes back to what Eagle Employment gave me. They gave me an alias of James Pars. Pars as in performance appraisal. They were making fun of my complaints of having a poor performance. God. And, a poor performance is the number one element used as far as taking reprisals. Every single case of reprisal will use an element of poor performance as a means to take someone out of a job. So, instead of being, an entity to do an investigation, they're an entity to do a cleanup job. So that's why I call EEO a cleanup crew. So using the alias James Pars, a lawsuit was filed. The attorney found a creative way to get information to Congress through the lawsuit. The letters were sent out to Congress. So now some congressional members began making some inquiries at the CIA. So the CIA Office of Congressional Affairs, OCA, reached out to me and immediately threatened me with punitive actions if I'm having direct contact with Congress, which is a violation of the law. And it actually would be even more reprisals against a whistleblower. So the point I make to the OCA official was, hey, my lawyer is in contact with, Congress. So, yeah, we've got information we need to pass to Congress that, the IG hasn't passed.
Yeah.
So here's a list of the things we need to pass. The CIA Office of Congressional Affairs had the audacity to say, we don't pass all those materials to Congress. So this brings up an issue. What things do you pass to Congress? How much do you withhold from Congress? What exactly do you tell Congress?
Right.
So the reality is that the IG never passed anything to Congress that I know of, and I don't know what the Office of Congressional Affairs for CIA passed to Congress. At this point in time, I'm running into the same shenanigans I ran into, 2 years earlier. That was that period of March 2015 through June, July 2015. Ironically, it's basically April 2015 through, again, July 2015. No help from anybody, no jobs. I'm being chased out, job denials left and right,
So where are you in this whole process? So you're sitting at home. I mean, they're not giving you a place to go to work, right?
At this time, unlike the prior time, April 2015 through September 2015, I didn't have a job back then. I would just go in and sit at a desk, and no job whatsoever.
Wow.
Ultimately, it got so toxic that I said, you know what, I need to take a leave of absence without pay. And I was actually out of the building for 2 months without any pay. That's how bad it was. This time, though, I found a former supervisor who had a job available. It was a temporary assignment as they were trying to fill that job. So I was able to go in and, sit in his office in a safe place as I tried to find a job. But my priority wasn't doing work for that office. It was trying to find a job.
Yeah.
But, now I'm fighting, all these different offices of the CIA. And eventually what happens here is I finally had enough, and I blow the whistle to the leadership, the number one, Director Pompeo, through his number 3, Brian Bulatao of the CIA. The response I got back from those two was shocking. Basically, what they did was they allowed the bureaucrats, Office probably of General Counsel, the Office of Inspector General, to respond to me, and they had the audacity to take and cut and paste the language from the lawyers to put it in an email and send it to me. They basically says, look, we're washing our hands of this. We need the IG to do their job. Good luck. That's basically the answer. So they were basically allowing the bureaucrats to run the show. So, I mean, it gets worse. Okay, because eventually.
So you're glad that Trump said that Pompeo's not welcome back into his administration then?
I was putting out some tweets on X about that because there's more to Pompeo.
Yeah. I mean, I heard a lot
much
of shit
more.
about
We
him
can get
too, by
into
the way.
that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what happens here is, it gets very complicated because the IG actually launched a counter investigation against me, accusing me of being a spy infiltrating the IG on whistleblower matters. So that they're basically investigating me as being, having independence issues. So now I'm forced into finding another lawyer that's more connected at the Hill, that has more power. And when I start submitting the request for a lawyer, the Office of General Counsel begins to obstruct and deny my request for another lawyer. Because I was undercover, I couldn't just go approach the lawyer. I had to ask a limited security approval from the Office of Security that goes through the Office of General Counsel. And they were obstructing this process. They refused to allow me to have an attorney. And it just begins.
That's a violation of your civil rights.
Exactly. And it continues to escalate. And eventually what happens here is now I begin to blow the whistle to the Director of National Intelligence, Daniel Coates, and eventually his deputy, Susan Gordon, about these issues, about, the whistleblower reprisal protections being broken, my whistleblower rights being denied.
Outside of CIA and you go to DNI, right?
DNI.
Okay.
Yeah. But, it's a dual track, one within the CIA up to Pompeo and one to the DNI, Daniel Coates. And Congress is sitting outside not doing anything really.
Are they just clueless, or they just didn't care, or what was your assessment on that?
There was a major Republican in the Senate Select Committee of Intelligence that when I reached out to him on these matters, he basically washed his hands of it and said, go talk to your Virginia senator.
Was that Radcliffe?
What was that?
Was that Radcliffe?
Not Radcliffe. I don't want to give a name out because it's an embarrassment for this.
Is this a senator or is this a member of the House?
A senator.
Oh, okay. So it can't be Radcliffe. Yep.
It's an embarrassment because, frankly, I was a constituent.
Wow.
Just leave it there. Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, this brings up other questions. I mean, are these senators and these Congress people doing oversight or not? And this is where I argue that they're not. Because when I was at the IG and through this entire process, I realized that, these agencies are spinning and controlling the narrative for these Hill congressional oversight bodies. And essentially, there's a lack of oversight here. So point is, Congress basically does nothing. And, basically, Daniel Coates, Sue Gorton do nothing. Pompeo, Bulatao do nothing. But, at this point in time, it continues to escalate.
And you still have a lawsuit out there, right?
Yeah, the lawsuit is out there. That is correct. Now I'm being basically investigated as an insider threat, being a threat to the workforce.
Jesus Christ.
So they send a team of 2 investigators, the threat management unit, to interview me. And the usual, I have no witnesses. It's what I say and whatever they want to write or say. But in this particular interview, both threat management unit investigators flat out told me, you are not a threat to the workforce. What do we need to do? What can we do to help you to resolve this issue? And I flat out told them, I need the Office of General Counsel to approve a new attorney for me. That's one. The second thing is the Inspector General continues to break the law, not follow standards, policies, and procedures. They have failed to let me see their report of an investigation that they claim to have done that I know for a fact was faulty because some of the people that they were supposed to talk to, were never talked to. And one of the persons that was talked to was basically told to answer yes or no. It wasn't allowed to give additional information. And the questions were asked from a frame of mind to have a predetermined outcome. So, there's a lot of questionable things here. So what happens next is the director of security sends an emissary, mafia-like tactics. And the emissary demands that I sit down and talk to him because he's got a message to pass to me from the director of security.
They went that far, huh?
So now I'm meeting with the emissary, Bambino, I forgot what I named him. Basically, it is what it is, and they start threatening me. It's like, you like your job? What's this job that you got? Be happy you have a job, as in trying to tell me that
we're going to destroy you type thing, right? Yeah.
What?
Like we're going to try and destroy you and make you unemployable if you don't back down, right?
Exactly. And, they were telling me, you probably are being a little bit too vocal about these things. And I flipped that around and said, well, you can say that I'm being vocal about these things, but at the same time, I can say you folks are being very, not more than vocal. You are violating the law, breaking the law, denying me of my civil rights, my whistleblower protection rights, all to kill a claim. Why? The guy just looked at me and swallowed hard because he couldn't answer. So, after that meeting, I was just floored and shocked. At that point in time, I go back the next day, I kind of sit on it. I'm documenting everything that's happening. I'm sending letters to the Office of Congressional Affairs, asking them to send them to Congress. I don't know if they sent them or not. So now I send a letter to this emissary, and I say, well, you know what? If the Director of Security takes these issues so serious, why doesn't the Director of Security and I sit down face to face to discuss these issues? Right. Any normal human being would sit down and talk. Well, actually, now they sent Salvatore on his Christmas massacre because the next person that reaches out to me is the personnel security director. And now he starts threatening to take actions against my clearance, against my job, if I don't comply with a cease and desist order. Basically, sign a letter of warning that I would cease and desist from, basically complaining about these issues.
Wow.
Civil rights law violation, threatening to take reprisals against a whistleblower, blah, 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 blah. I blowed the whistle to Daniel Coates, Sue Gordon, Mike Pompeo, Brian Bulatao. I asked for this to get to Congress, and nobody does anything. The next day, the Office of Security denies me entrance into a building, and I'm effectively basically kicked out of the CIA, put on administrative leave with pay, and fast forward a few months, I begin to be put through the Personnel Evaluation Board for termination. And eventually, months pass by. Nobody does anything. Not a single congressman, senator, do anything about these issues. And the CIA Office of Security basically terminates me. Yep. I go through the appeal process. Now I'm dealing again with the Office of Inspector General for the Intelligence Community. By this time, there's a new person there. And they tell me, file the ICWPAs again.
Oh,
okay. Okay. At the same time, I'm filing complaints with the Council for Inspector Generals because Sue Gordon actually was the only one that responded to me. And she admitted to me that they had serious problems with the IGs in the intelligence community, like CIA, DNI. So I filed some complaints with SIGI to Michael Horowitz. Michael Horowitz got a binder, a big binder. So did Congress. Congress got two big binders on the Democrats and the Republicans.
Yeah.
So they got a lot of details about all these shenanigans, all these reprisals and so forth. So, eventually what happens here is the IG gives me an infamous form called Form 401. That in order to process an Intelligence Community Whistleblower Protection Act disclosure, it has to be first-hand information, and it has to be regarding intelligence activities under the authorities of the DNI, funded by the DNI, so forth. Well, months go by. I still can't get an attorney. The CIA is still obstructing me from getting an attorney using all.
So you couldn't just walk down the street, at whatever 1800 K Street and walk into Akim Gump and talk to one of the lawyers there.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, I could have by this time. I probably could have gotten an attorney, but the thing is, without that limit security approval, the CIA wouldn't deal with him. They would basically tell him to go pound sand. And the fact is that actually the attorney did call the Office of General Counsel and goes, "Hey, I'm trying to get, my potential client here is trying to get this approval, and you folks are not doing this approval. You're not approved." Click. They hang the phone on him.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean it's just mind-boggling. So eventually,
it's terrible. It is terrible.
I get fired. My termination date comes, and I don't have a response in the appeal process. Now, the appeal process, this is why I call it a kangaroo court. All right. The board, the Personnel Evaluation Board, consists of different elements. Office of General Counsel that wants me out of there. The Office of Medical Service, the shrinks, who basically think I'm crazy. And you've got my career service, and on top of that, whoever else may be in there. But ultimately, the Personnel Evaluation Board makes only a recommendation to the Deputy Director of Security.
Wow.
The Deputy Director of Security is the one that decides what actions to take upon a person who goes upon this board. For all I know, the board could have recommended, hey, this guy did no wrong. He should be, reinstated and these problems should be fixed. And the Deputy Director of Security said, F you, I'm going to fire this guy. Okay? Or for that matter, they could have recommended termination, but the Deputy of Security could have said, no, we got a problem here we need to fix. Okay? But the point is, the Deputy Director of Security basically fired me. So now I got another layer of appeal. My layer of appeal, do you know who it goes to?
No, oh, please.
The Director of Security.
Oh, my God. What a shit show, man. Dude, it's total bullshit. It is total bullshit.
Make this crap up.
Oh, my God. So, dude, so the process is
you know
totally
what the
corrupt,
answer
man.
is.
The
You're
process,
fired.
the process
So
is
now
totally
I
corrupt.
have to appeal to the number 3. Well, now we can get into Pompeo. Okay. Who did Pompeo pick as his deputy?
Oh my
Gina
God,
Haspel.
yes.
Who is Gina Haspel?
Well, she's a
Gina Haspel
long-term
is
Brennan
a
person, wasn't she?
handpicked, groomed by Brennan.
Yeah, yeah.
She made her career through Brennan appointments to Chief of Station London,
Yep.
so forth. So she was in charge of London during the Steele dossier. Okay, so Pompeo had the audacity to basically put a Brennan protege as his deputy. So, and what
And then she
happened with
became,
him
and then
in
she
this
became
case?
CIA director, right? Which is even worse. Which is
Well,
fucked up.
eventually she would be, the CIA director. Yeah. And at this stage with the CIA director, whereas the CIA Office of Congressional Affairs, well, no, we don't pass those documents to Congress, like my performance appraisals.
Yeah.
Now they were passing everything they can pass left and right and declassify left and right to pass Congress anything and everything that would help them to get Gina Haspel to be, approved
Right.
as the CIA director. Yeah.
How corrupt, man? Absolutely corrupt. So where is this process now? What happened?
Well, what happens here is, my official date of termination was September 28 or 26, 27, 28, 2018. But I don't have a response to my last appeal until mid-January of 2019. Now, after that termination date in September, all of a sudden now, they reach out to me, the CIA, and say, oh, you can now retain your attorney. Okay? So I go through the process to retain the new attorney. The new attorney and I meet basically in December of 2019. December 2018, excuse me. And, he begins to make phone calls. Eventually what happens here is in mid-January of 2019, the CIA basically tells my new attorney he was fired. There's nothing to discuss. Go pound sand. As in, go F yourself.
Wow.
Case closed. Okay. But it doesn't end there.
Oh,
it doesn't end there.
I would hope not. I hope it ends well.
No, well, it doesn't end there. So I still have the outstanding complaint with the Council of Inspector Generals.
Yep.
And the Council of Inspector Generals were doing an investigation against some of these IG persons. And, they never reached out to me. So I have no idea what happened with that investigation. At the same time, the Department of Homeland Security Inspector General was doing an investigation against the CIA Inspector General, the acting Inspector General, and the former Inspector General, because the CIA Office of Inspector General was corrupt as hell itself. They were taking reprisals against whistleblowers within their own office. They had found fault that indeed the IG and the deputy IG, who became the acting IG, had taken reprisals against their own officers.
At
so
the
the
CIA.
entire CIA
At the
Office
CIA.
of Inspector General was corrupt, and you couldn't count on them. Okay, that's one issue. The other issue is I following up and refiling my Intelligence Community Whistleblower Protection Act disclosures. So in February, March of 2019, after all these shenanigans, all these things are being revealed about the corrupt CIA IG, the shenanigans with the lawyers, the shenanigans of how I got fired, my first reprisal complaint never fully being investigated, my second wave of reprisals never being investigated. I filed the ICWPAs with the ICIG, and this time they immediately respond with a letterhead. You are no longer employed by the intelligence community. You have no right whatsoever to file a complaint. So
Take a hike.
Go F yourself, basically. They didn't bother to process my Intelligence Community Whistleblower Protection Act disclosures, despite the fact that the form they gave me demanded that it be firsthand, that it not be hearsay, and that it be regarding, significant issues within the DNI authorities and DNI funding, which it all was. And for that matter, Sue Gordon, the deputy for the Director of National Intelligence, had asked me to file complaints about the IG shenanigans. So,
That's amazing.
my case never resolved. I never heard back as far as what happened with the investigation for the first wave of reprisals that I know was effed up. And Fast forward, September 2019. What happens in September 2019? The Ukraine whistleblower, using the Intelligence Community Whistleblower Protection Act process to file hearsay complaints against President Trump on matters that were outside the funding and authorities of the Director of National Intelligence. But the IG immediately pounced on it, wanted to push it forward. That's basically demanding that the DNI, acting DNI, in fact, was an acting DNI, pass it to Congress. The acting DNI, saw what it was. This is not an Intelligence Community Whistleblower Protection Act disclosure protected, at all. It doesn't merit at all the law. More importantly, he took it to the Office of Legal Counsel for the Department of Justice that ruled that it's not. So the point is the Democrats and their surrogates everywhere, media, wherever they were at, pounced on it, demanding that action be taken with these allegations. This whistleblower was heralded as a hero.
Yeah.
But, I revealed through a Twitter thread that the form had been changed and watered down, whereas real whistleblowers like myself were required to use, firsthand information or else it wouldn't be processed. Now, all of a sudden, this was watered down. So I went public with this, and it caused a firestorm. I communicated with Sean Davis from The Federalist, and he put out an article. I asked him not to put my name in it because this is something bizarre. Finally, for the first time, about the same time that they were going forward with these allegations against this Ukraine whistleblower, the IG basically said, hey, we're going to look into your case again. We have forwarded your case, the first wave of reprisals, to the Department of Energy IG. So the Department of Energy IG is looking at it. Reach out to them.
What?
Well, I did not help my case by going public and calling out the IG for his hypocrisy. Okay. But the point is that, if the Department of Energy IG was truly looking at my case, you would think they would want to communicate with me to get the facts, to find out what I have to say.
Yeah.
So I tried reaching out to the Department of Energy IG. I couldn't get a hold of anybody. Nobody. I called in. Who are you? We know nothing about you. I write in email. We don't know anything about your case. I finally go on LinkedIn and I find the name, and I was able to get an email for a senior level officer at the Department of Energy IG, and I write out to him. And as soon as I write out to him, they had the audacity to send me back a letter saying they closed my case. There's nothing to look at here.
Oh, shit.
So a cleanup crew to cover up the crime.
That's amazing. Or to weaponize it, right? Against somebody. Yeah.
And at the same time, the process being weaponized to go after Trump.
Yeah. Yeah.
And a fake whistleblower getting heralded as a hero by the media, by the Democrats, red carpet pulled out for him. But people like myself who blow the whistle, treat it like yesterday's trash. Now, in this entire saga, sadly, I took a hit for President Trump. And to this date, I can't get any help from anybody on Trump's camp. I mean, my goodness, I basically put my pension on the line. I've been fired a year shy of retirement.
Well, I'll promise you this. I'll promise you this, Pedro. I'm going to make sure somebody hears about it really soon. Really soon.
I appreciate that because I did no wrong. The only thing I did wrong was not be a bureaucrat and hang the manager in Afghanistan.
And you know what? It goes back to what Charlie Kirk said. You did this. You weaponized. You lose, lawfare against the president. You get Matt Gaetz. You did this. You get this person. You did this. You get this person. And that's what it comes down to, right? They weaponized every agency in this country to go after a sitting president, a duly elected sitting president, right? To try and execute a coup. Because what they did against Trump was to try and execute a coup, and good people like yourself, they had to get out of the way. I mean, that's the reality of it, right?
And not just, people like myself, but everybody around President Trump's orbit. Right. Bannon, Navarro, Caputo, Roger Stone, Rudy Giuliani.
Yep.
And who knows how many
General Hill. I mean, it starts with General Hill.
Who have suffered tremendously.
Yeah.
And at the same time, look at the J6ers.
Yeah.
And this goes back to the appointments. And you were asking about how do we clean up these bureaucrats. Well, we cannot make the mistake Pompeo made or that Daniel Coates made, or for that matter, William Sessions made.
Right.
So the first appointments that President Trump made in his first administration.
I think, look, I think the fraud of 2020 was the best gift Trump could have gotten. And I always say this, and I say this with truth and with faith, that God is always coming and his timing is always perfect, right? And sometimes we don't understand why things happen, but they happen for a reason, and we just have to trust and have faith in God because he knows more than we do, right? I use this example also is if somebody gives you raw eggs, raw flour, oil, etc., and says, go ahead and eat them individually, you're like, no way, that's disgusting. But if you put them all together, you make a beautiful cake, right? So sometimes a lot of these things are going to lead us to a beautiful, magnificent, amazing tasting cake, right? It's just that we're getting the ingredients by themselves, right? And once we have them all together, we're going to be able to make that cake. And look, right now, Trump knows who's against him, who's with him. Everybody has been exposed. We know who the bad guys are. We're not bringing those people back in. Don Jr. said it the other day. He's like, we know exactly who's who. We know exactly who did what. And we're not bringing any of those people back ever again. And we're starting with loyalists and people that are qualified to do that job and go push the America First agenda, right? And at the same time, maybe not retribution, but accountability. We need to find out who did what and hold them accountable because that's bullshit. You should not be able to use the power of the government to go after its citizens and destroy them. It's wrong. It's, unpatriotic. It's treasonous, I would say, and especially after a sitting president and a political, opponent. I mean, it's fucked up, dude. It's crazy. Give me 1 second. We're going to go to a pause real quick and we're going to be right back to keep talking to Pedro. Let's go, Mr. Producer. Kick it off.
I'm excited to announce our Christmas extravaganza is finally here. Get this season's flannel sheets for as low as $59.98. They won't last long, so get them while you can. Our famous My Slippers, they haven't been on sale for over a year. Regularly $119.98, now only $59.98. Our 6-piece towel sets are back in stock with extremely limited quantities, only $29.98. With hundreds of MyPillow products, there's something for everyone on your Christmas list. Bathrobes, duvets, quilts, down comforters, and so much more. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to save on all MyPillow products. For example, flannel sheets for as low as $59.98. Or our 6-piece towel sets, just $29.98. But that's not all. I'm extending our 60-day money-back guarantee until March 1st of 2025. Plus, all orders over $75 or more ship absolutely free.
All right, we're back. And don't forget MyPillow.com and the promo code IGH for a sweet, sweet discount, especially as we get into the holiday seasons and we got to go shopping, man. Those mattress toppers are amazing. The pillows are awesome. What can I tell you? You know what? Pedro, like we said at the beginning of the show, I think this is a once in a generation or maybe a once in a lifetime opportunity to fix this country. I think the team is amazing. I mean, look at some of the people. I mean, Elon Musk, Vivek, Ratcliffe over at the CIA. I was going to ask you about Tulsi, what you thought about that. But, I think we're going to get cash over at FBI. Matt Gaetz at AG. I think that's probably the most compelling appointment that he can make in order to start this cleanup stuff, right? I bet you're salivating. You're like Pavlov's dog right now, hearing that bell. Every time Trump sends an announcement of an appointment, you're probably like Pavlov's dog. You hear that bell, you're ready to go. You're ready to go, aren't you?
Cut the dogs loose.
Yeah,
These
man.
are all anti-swamp, anti-establishment nominees, and we need them in there from day one.
Yeah, man.
So I'm pro recess appointments or whatever it takes to get them in there to be able to hit the ground running.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, we're dealing with an entrenched bureaucracy that they will find a way to defy the president like they have done historically. Not just, every president has had to deal with, bureaucracies that are so entrenched that they will fight back and push back on some of the president's policies. Even Biden, Obama, Clinton. I mean, sadly, it's just the way the executive bureaucracy works. But in this particular case, having a strong leader like a Matt Gaetz in charge as Attorney General, and they have picked some wonderful deputies, because they also have to keep in mind, it's not just the director or the leader of each of these organizations, but they have to begin to look downward into the deputy, the chief management officer for the Director of National Intelligence, the chief operations officer for the CIA. Those two positions are the number threes. Similarly, the number threes in the Department of Justice, the FBI. Now, for the FBI, you're right. To me, right now, of all the names that, I've already had positions offered and those that remain, Kash Patel is the best person to go in and take the FBI. Mike Rogers, no, please no. Mike Rogers is basically a pro-deep state establishment politician who will not transform the FBI. That would be a huge mistake. But now Kash Patel cannot do this alone. Yeah. He's going to need serious help with the deputies. And for that matter, they also need to look at other offices, the critical offices, the Office of Congressional Affairs, managing relations with Congress, the Office of Public Affairs, relations with the press,
you know what? And I've heard that office in particular is corrupt to the core. The Office of Public Affairs. I heard it is corrupt to the core and extremely, extremely deceitful.
They play favorites with the press, basically play ball with us and we'll leak to you select information. You don't play ball with us, we won't give you any information. So this is how they subvert the press. No secret. Porter Goss was the chairman of the House Permanent Select Committee of Intelligence in the mid-2000s, and he was appointed by President George W. Bush to be the CIA director. Now, he brought his own team in, and he was hated, but leaks destroyed him. He was embarrassed through leaks, and eventually he left the CIA. Yep. So my point is that, whoever comes in as a director or a senior leader for any of these government agencies, they need to look beyond the deputy and the number three, but start looking at public affairs, congressional affairs, and, for that matter, all the way down the line of all the senior management team.
So here's a quick question that I wanted to ask you is, Tulsi, what do you think?
I like Tulsi because she is not part of the establishment, totally anti-establishment. She's got the credentials to come in and be a director of national intelligence. For those that complain that she doesn't, I mean, my goodness, we have Avril Haines as the director of national intelligence. Look at Avril Haines' background. She has absolutely a very weak resume in national security issues, unlike Tulsi Gabbard, who's got more experience as a soldier for that matter. And I strongly endorse her as the director of national intelligence. But again, she's going to need to really look into picking a strong deputy. I heard the name General Flynn, I think he volunteered his hand to be the deputy to work for her. I believe that he would be an outstanding deputy director of national intelligence to help her navigate this massive bureaucracy and having someone who has an intelligence background that knows how to deal with these characters.
Yeah, no, and the intelligence world and the bureaucracy is horrible. Peter Hegseth over at DOD. There's been a lot of, he's a freaking journalist. He doesn't know anything. And come on, man. You can't take away his fucking military career, dude. And I think the fear of Pete is everything that he said publicly is you got to go in there and you got to cut everybody. Everybody has been involved in any kind of bullshit. Generals, colonels, get them out of there immediately. All of them.
This DEI crap has to be completely just gutted and shut down.
Yep.
Every single DEI office, just get rid of it. You've got equal employment opportunity.
Yeah.
Part of equal employment opportunity is to protect the civil rights of employees.
That's right. So why do you need DEI? I mean, that's pathetic. It's ridiculous. But look, I think, the day after or the night of the election, DEI, wokeness, and all that garbage died. And I think we're seeing it every day that passes after the election. We see that all that stuff every day is less important, less talked about, is going away. I think even the left is realizing that they overstepped. Even though you have the insane asylum escapees that think they didn't go far enough. But those are far and few between. So I think that era is gone. It was a long era, like I said originally. I think it started with Obama, and and thank God it's over. But look, I think the president has an amazing opportunity. I think there's going to be a lot of challenges. I believe the establishment is not going to roll over and play dead. They want power. See, what people don't understand, is that the establishment, is not, this great, marvelous class, is this institutionalized corruption that only gives a shit about creating wealth and creating more power for themselves, right? That's all they give a shit about. They don't care about the American people. They don't care about the country. They don't care about anything. They just care about wealth and power. And that's and look, man, some of the basic stuff going back to George Orwell. Absolute power corrupts absolutely, and once they have it, they don't want to let go, and they're fighting tooth and nail to stop it. I mean, the last stupid move by Cocaine Mitch with the Senate majority, right? Who did he put in there? He put in Thune. It's the establishment's way of trying to negotiate with Trump and saying, look, you want us to pass your agenda, we want some cabinets. That's great. You have all these nominations. We're not going to pass these. We want this person in that cabinet, this person in that cabinet, and we'll work with you on your agenda. And if you don't, then have fun. Go at it. But I think Trump is very well prepared. I think he's very well committed, and he's going to sit there and dare them to vote against them and shoot them down. He's going to make them go public, and he's going to destroy them publicly. But we'll see. We'll see who wins. I have a feeling that Trump will win this battle. Trump is alive by a millisecond. Only God is capable of doing that, and I know a lot of people out there don't have faith or have lost faith for a lot of different reasons. You have to find a way to find faith again, like the prodigal son. And, what better than having Pedro on to talk us through some of this faith aspects. But Pedro, faith is important, always has been important. And can anybody deny that God played a role in what's happened in this election and in Trump? I don't think anybody could have done what Trump did without God. It's impossible.
It takes a supernatural infusement of just fortitude, strength, power, and might to be able to withstand the attacks that an individual will suffer from the hands of these deep state actors. I mean, I witnessed it with the bureaucratic bullying. I mean, I was not, thrown in jail or prosecuted, thank God, but, I didn't break any law. And for that matter, in some ways you can call them trivial issues, but the reality is they're not trivial, because when you're talking about whistleblower matters in the intelligence community, they can be life and death issues.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of intelligence failures could very well have been avoided had they listened to whistleblowers, as we have witnessed with one particular whistleblower who blew the whistle in the late 2000s, early 2010s on some serious technical programs, according to press reports, that cost the lives of tens, if not dozens, or dozens upon dozens of the lives of assets. Now, that's a different matter. So what made me be able to put up with this bureaucratic bullying is my faith in God. I found my strength in the Word of God, my faith in Jesus Christ as the Son of the living God, and, prayer. At the same time, I had people praying for me. And take the case of Trump. Trump has come out with faith in God, faith in Jesus, and he's had, a significant amount of prayer and people undergirding him. So undoubtedly, I mean, my goodness, everything that they threw at Trump, Jesus. An individual that doesn't have faith in God could become hopeless and just give up. And thank God that through...
And it goes back to that, right? It goes back to the power of prayer. And how people underestimate the power of prayer. It is so important, so divine, so strong. And you got to understand is that God is listening and he is answering prayers, sometimes not giving us the answer we want. But we also have to understand what I said, right? His timing is perfect. So his timing might be different than ours. And his outcome might be one that's different than ours. And it's for a reason we just can't understand it right now, but we see it later. Like, we're like, oh my God, how did 2020 happen? How did we end up with these insane asylum people running the country? They're going to destroy the country. And it was, because there was a better moment. Because God needed the country to realize what was happening and how dangerous and treacherous the left really is and what their agenda really was and how evil they really are as people. Right, to weaponize the government to go after citizens and everything they try to do to go after moms and parents, at school boards, Catholic parents, etc. Because they didn't agree with their wokeness and their, identity politics and all that stuff. Just very, very dangerous people. And people needed to understand. Also, if Trump would have won in 2020, he would have had a Democratic House, a Democratic Senate. They would have blocked him every step of the way. He wouldn't have been able to accomplish anything. Now he's coming in with 76 million plus votes, winning the popular vote massively, crushing Kamala Harris on an electoral map. A landslide mandate victory with control of both houses of Congress. Like we keep on saying, this is a historic moment, and you know what? He can actually create change for the better, for the people, for the entire country, and for the world,
Absolutely unprecedented. Had Trump won in 2020, like you said, he would not have had the House or the Senate, and it would have been a neutered presidency where he could have accomplished very little. He would have finished his term with Pence running for the presidency, who is really a person of the establishment, and he probably would have been part of the process to gut down anything that Trump would have done. Or, typically what happens after 8 years of one party being in power, fatigue sets in, and usually it swings to the other party. So we could have potentially had a Democrat president now in 2024 who could have been strong enough, like an Obama or a Clinton, who would have been there for an additional 8 years and destroy this country.
Yeah, easily. My friend, it's been a pleasure, man. It's always fun to have you. It's always great to talk to you. Where can people find you on social media? Where do you like to interact the most?
The easiest is my website, pedroisraelorta.com, pedroisraelorta.com. You'll get details about what I'm doing, book, movie there, links to the book. That'll be the easiest. And I'm also on X at Pedro Israel Orta.
Fantastic, man. So how do you see this going forward? Do you see the confirmations happening?
Well,
Do you see tremendous pushback? Who do you see in? Who do you see out? Do you see any surprises?
I mean, there's going to be quite a bit of pushback. Unfortunately, we've got to deal with the election shenanigans because, frankly, we probably would have won Nevada, Arizona, Michigan, and Wisconsin if it wasn't for the questionable voter issues in those states, which would have given Trump a significant senatorial majority to neuter and cancel out the weak Murkowski and Collins, who probably won't even approve any of
Romney's still around, right? Don't we have Romney 2 more years?
I don't remember if Romney's still around, but we still have people that are weak out there who are not going to support President Trump. So President Trump is in danger of not getting Senate approval for some of his nominees, and this is where that recess appointment process may need to kick in.
Yeah, but the recess...
We may have no choice but to do so.
But if you look at the recess appointment, you're going to have already senators on our side that are going to oppose, right? I mean,
it's a technical
maneuver. You're going to have Murkowski,
maneuver.
you're going to have Collins, you're probably going to have McConnell, you're probably going to have Cornyn, right?
I mean, the Senate can deny a motion to recess the Senate and we'll stay in session, but then you also have the House. The House can vote to, we're going to go on recess. And all it takes is for one chamber of Congress to go on recess to have a dispute. And according to the Constitution, the president can resolve that dispute and says, nope, Congress is on recess, so bye. And that shuts it down, and that opens the door for recess appointments.
Gotcha. So how does that recess appointment process work? So you don't need quorum?
No, you don't need both houses to agree on it. House of Representatives and the Senate chamber. But what happens is it's a temporary assignment, a temporary appointment where the person appointed can serve for X number of days. And eventually they would have to step out of that position. But it would be enough time for someone to go in and be able to begin to put in a number 2, number 3, number 4, 5, 6, so forth, to begin to transforming these institutions. And hopefully what happens is the person that goes in on a recess appointment does such a good job that ultimately the senators would agree to go ahead and confirm them.
Gotcha. So that's maybe the strategy for a Matt Gaetz.
That could be the strategy.
Go in and start putting people in place and then hopefully get confirmed. And if he doesn't, at least the gutting has started.
And I mean, the president has the ability to, if someone is shut down and they don't take them, to renominate them, and that sends a pretty strong signal to those that voted no.
That's interesting. That's good to know. I didn't know that. So the intel community, we've gone extensively on this. How easy or how difficult is it going to be to clean up? Going back to your old home.
It's a real tough one, because how do you ferret out the bad ones and the good ones, as far as the good employees and the bad employees? You cannot go to the mafia and tell the mafia, okay, we know you're bad and you need to clean yourself up.
Yeah.
So go clean yourself up and get back to us as far as which people did you fire. We have witnessed the FBI literally clean out the good ones and keep the same like-minded ones inside. Similarly, we had a joke among us at the CIA. They promote their own kind.
Yeah.
So typically, they promote their own type of bureaucrats into senior positions. So yeah, it's tough. And again, it begins with those key critical appointments at the number 2, number 3, and some of the senior officers in other offices. And, there may be a need to just, at writ large, just get rid of a lot of the senior executives. You just can't change the culture overnight. But
it's the top, right? It's really the top. Yeah, it's really the top, right? If you get rid of the top, then, or do you think, because somebody else told me, he said, well, it's not necessarily the top. The top is too easy because they've been mining these organizations for decades with bureaucrats that think like them, like you just mentioned. So it's widespread inside. Can he do it in 4 years? I guess that's the question. Can he clean it up in 4 years? Or is that too optimistic?
It's a formidable task. Part of the problem is to do that government efficiency examination that Elon Musk and Vivek plan on doing. It's okay. Some of these bureaucracies are bloated. There's no doubt about it. Do we really need that many officers in some of these offices doing such jobs? Like DEI just completely shut it down. For example, the operations officer. Frankly, the CIA is supposed to be the preeminent human intelligence gathering organization to collect intelligence overseas. But it has become a bloated bureaucracy back at headquarters. Do you really need that much personnel working at CIA headquarters on CIA functions at headquarters? I remember working for some offices where we had just too many people. And you clearly could have cut that office in half.
Wow.
Because half of that office was basically not doing much of any work. And usually it was a small percentage of the people doing the work. So, keep for example, whenever the government closes down, or a funding issue, operations still continue, but on a small contingent workforce that comes in and is working during that time period.
Right. I can't remember what they call it anymore. Essentials, the essential employees. Yeah. when you all of a sudden you're like, wait, all these people are not essential. What the fuck do we have them on payroll for? What the hell is going on? Right?
Exactly.
That should be your threshold right there. Problem solved very easy. Holy crap, dude. FBI, seems like the FBI today, is it worse than the FBI with Hoover? Is it more corrupt?
Well, what happened with the FBI is 9/11 and the transformation of the intelligence authority.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, that fundamentally changed the FBI. The FBI needs to go back to law enforcement, bank robbers, white crimes, human trafficking, pedophiles, cyber crimes. Go back to its core foundations of being basically a law enforcement entity working on critical law enforcement issues that are necessary.
Right.
I mean, we got to keep our banks safe. We got to keep our banking safe.
Yep. So what happened? So you said 9/11 transformed that agency. Walk us through that. I think everybody understands Homeland Security, the creation of that, and more government, more bureaucracy, and everything has changed about transferring and working together and information transfers and all that. But how did the FBI change? Because of the counterintelligence component?
It created a new component of intelligence analysis, and at the same time, they were given vast powers on counterterrorism, and their counterintelligence mission increased. So instead of working law enforcement, crime-related issues, now it's doing counterterrorism. Now, what happens here is those authorities to do counterterrorism and counterintelligence are so powerful that it could be flipped on just like flipping a light switch. If the FBI determines that somebody is a counterintelligence or counterterrorism threat, they can turn on all these tools, FISA, for example, to start collecting on them. And sadly, a lot of personnel have been diverted from core functions into working some of these issues. And that's what I mean by tailoring it back to go back to its core duties of ensuring that, people at the FBI are working on critical functions of law enforcement to keep our nation safe, rather than, using it to go after J6 type persons who are now considered, a domestic terrorist.
Yeah.
Or for that matter, calling somebody a Russian agent like Tulsi Gabbard and start collecting intelligence on her and put her on a no-fly list, as they've done.
How is that even possible? How is that even possible? When they know it's not true.
Well, you make a comment, that Putin is right because, we made an agreement with Russia, with Boris Yeltsin back in the 90s that we wouldn't expand NATO and, and Ukraine would be neutral.
Right.
And then we break that agreement. So if you go out there and start, defending Putin, they'll basically start accusing you of being a Russian asset, of, propagating Russian propaganda.
Yeah, but that's politics, right? That's not real.
But unfortunately, with the counterterrorism, counterintelligence authorities, they can consider you a counterterrorism threat. And if you're by using the counterintelligence authorities, it's pretty much almost identical. So that's what happens there.
Man, that is. I hope Trump can get everybody nominated, confirmed. And we can start cleaning up this mess, man, because it has been a disaster, especially the last 4 years. Look, you've obviously been in the agency. You've seen weaponization of governments on its people all across the world. I don't think you ever expected that to happen here in the United States. I mean, I've seen it all over the fucking place too, and never thought that something like that could ever happen here. And when I started seeing it, I was like, holy shit. And I think, that's one of the big things also why Hispanics have, moved to Trump so ferociously. 46%, it probably would have been a little bit higher, is because we've seen all this play out in Latin America for decades. And now we're seeing it here, and we're like, holy shit. If fucking America falls, where the fuck do we go? Right? There's nowhere else to go, like Reagan said, right?
Yeah, on that note, Miami-Dade County, Florida. I mean, after JFK and basically the Bay of Pigs, historically it was basically a Republican stronghold with the Latin American community down in Miami-Dade. Bill Clinton flipped that.
Yep.
Beginning with Bill Clinton, it changed basically to Democratic.
We were just talking about that on Friday. The last president to win Dade County was Bush in '88.
That's correct. And Trump flipped that now for the first time.
Yeah, plus 10.
It's a predominant, Republican stronghold in Miami-Dade County.
Yeah, man.
And it's because, again, the Latin people have seen through the shenanigans of the Democratic Party. It's like, wait a moment, this is the same tyranny we find in Venezuela, Cuba. This has got to stop.
I'm glad you brought up Venezuela. So everybody knows, obviously you've been intelligence, so everybody knows, or it's said pretty openly, that the Cuban intelligence, arm is one of the best in the world, or at least in the hemisphere. What about Sabine? What about the Venezuelans? Are they a joke? I mean, I hear something like they're more of a joke. They just make noise. They like to make noise. They're just, sable rattlers. They're ineffective. They're useless.
I mean, for the most part, these Cubans, the Venezuelans, are very good at being internal intelligence operatives to protect the status quo of the power elites. In the case of the Cubans, their entire function is basically to do operations and collect against the United States, who they see as their biggest threat. But the reality is that apart from that, it's not a very formidable intelligence organization. Other than that, domestic ability, it's kind of, think of an FBI weaponized to go after internal dissent, as we saw with J6, but on a total complete different level.
So we know that there's a lot of members of Sabine or associated to them or family members or friends of that are here in the United States. Talking to law enforcement friends, they have them identified. They know who they are. But they also say, they're useless. They really don't, they're not effective. They don't do anything. They just make noise. So they're nobody. They're nothing.
Their ability to basically influence U.S. politics is very limited.
Zero.
Extremely limited. I mean, the way our political system works, they can probably pump out some ads, political advertisements or propaganda trying to prop up another candidate.
Yeah.
But, when it comes to policies against Cuba, policies against Venezuela, or policies that are of significant, of interest to political candidates, if you look at the Democrats and the Republicans, they're pretty much very, very similar. There may be just a few outstanding differences as far as how they would approach relations with Cuba or Venezuela.
Interesting. And you had mentioned, and we've talked in the past, your work with the cartels.
Yeah,
they own and run Mexico, right? They've had a member in the cabinet in every Mexican administration, as far as we know. Why is that ignored so much, Pedro?
Well, what has happened in a lot of these Latin American countries is these cartels have become so powerful, or not just the cartels, but all the other support functions.
They're like a business. They're like a business. I was talking to a buddy of mine at the DA, and he says, "We know who the heads are. If we want to go meet with them, we just call their office and set up an appointment." It's fucked up, dude.
What has happened here is they have corrupted their countries because of the influence of money in politics, or even more importantly, death threats. I mean, they have the ability to go kill probably anyone they want to kill if they wanted to. I remember, talking to local law enforcement in some of these countries, and it's like, look, we know there's crime going on. We know there are, drugs flowing somewhere, and we've been warned. Turn a blind eye, because if you don't, we're going to kill you. So we want to live because we got a family to feed and we got a family to support.
I remember back in '93 when I was recruited to the DEA, and I was recruited by a guy that was not in the DEA, who was in another office, which was pretty funny. And he was telling me, DA is actively recruiting. He was a former DA guy. He had just transferred, and they're always on the lookout for people, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, your father and this and that, and, you've been traveling back and forth, you speak both languages, et cetera, et cetera. Anyways, I had a long conversation, about 2 hours, and I remember I went home, and that's when I told you, I talked to my dad, and I said, hey, and he goes, dude, CIA and DEA, stay the fuck away from them. They're corrupt as fuck. You never want to be involved in that. They will leave you behind, and nobody will come get you, and you're fucking dead. And I remember those words, and I was like, oh my God, dude. But I never did. I always remained friends with a lot of the guys like you and others, and 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 it's crazy because you realize how much the cartels influence a lot of these countries. And they influence them tremendously. They don't care who's winning. They buy presidents.
In some ways, it's like a blessing that I was actually fired from the CIA and that I'm not in good standing with them. Because if I were in good standing with them, I would be considered part of the deep state, part of the establishment, and it would actually inhibit and limit my ability to do many other things.
Yep.
And at the same time, possibly because, I've been fired as a whistleblower, I haven't tried, and I have no need to travel to Russia or Cuba or Venezuela. But, my ability to travel to, let's say, one of these countries for whatever reason, it could be available to me because I am no longer considered to be part of that establishment.
Right. Yep. So what's next for Pedro, man? Are you interested in serving in this administration if asked? Is that something you would look forward to?
If asked to serve in this administration, I would wholeheartely consider it for the right position. Absolutely. I believe that there's a lot I can contribute, considering that, I've got it's basically 19 years of federal service. By the time you look at my time with the CIA, 18 and a half years since I was officially fired, the last notification, January 21, 2019, and 6 months of military service brings me up to 19 years of federal service. So I've got that time.
So
and
you
I
got
also
one more
have,
year,
my
man. You got one more year left. To, oh my God, they cut you out a year. That's crazy.
I was under first special, which is a special category that allows you to retire after 20 years of service, as long as you're 50 years or older.
Right, it's a combination of time and age, right? Yep.
And it was a hard-earned first special because, I paid a price physically and family-wise working in war zones.
Yeah. Well, hopefully you'll come back, man. We love to have you on. You're a good friend. I've had you over at the house, so what can I say, right? I'd love to have you come on over and over again and continue talking. There's so much more. I'm gonna read the book because I haven't, and next time let's deep dive into that. What do you think?
Yeah, perfect. And the book. The meat of it is Afghanistan, 2014, 2015, chapter 17 onward. Chapter 1, the weaponized whistleblowing against President Trump and the reality that whistleblowers like myself are treated like yesterday's trash. And chapters 2 to 16 is basically the backstory, so people can realize that, I was a good employee. I did my job. I did what I was supposed to do, so I was not a troublemaker.
Awesome, man. Well, I appreciate you, Pedro. You're a friend, you're a pal, and you're a true patriot, and we'll see you soon, man.
Pleasure. Thank you, Ivan.
All right, take care. All right, hope everybody enjoyed this. God, that guy's a stud. He's just a good man, a good patriot, and also a man of faith, a family man, and somebody that, really deserves justice, like so many people out there that are asking for, it's time for retribution, it's time for payback. I think he expresses it the right way. Not look at this with vengeance, but look at it as accountability. We need to make people accountable for the actions they did, for the lives they destroyed, and they should pay a price for that. Anyways, you know where to find us. We're on Rumble. You can find us on podcasts. We're on Pandora. We're on Stitcher. We're on Apple, Spotify, iHeart, Amazon Music, Audible, and probably a slew other mores. So no excuse. Download the podcast platform that you prefer, or watch us on Rumble, man. We'd love to have you. And don't forget, follow us on social media. We're on every single platform. IGH Going Rogue on IG, on TikTok, on Facebook, on X, on Truth, on Getter. We're everywhere. Follow us. Send us a tweet. Tag 2 of your friends and follow me. And you get drawn into a raffle that we're going to announce on the 15th of December, and you get to pick one of these drinks, either a Basil Hayden or a Zacapa 23-year-old rum, and hopefully celebrate a awesome Christmas and New Year's. All right, take care. We'll see you tomorrow.